Right.
So I don't think that will.
All right. I just didn't.
Yeah, okay. Great.
The door.
I think Samuel's going to.
Okay, ready?
Oh, she's not. Okay. All right. All right.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the regularly scheduled Sylvania Township Trustee meeting for May 16th at 5 p.m.
Call the roll. Mr. Mahoney?
Here.
Mr. Genowine?
Here.
Simcoe here. Mr. Crandall's on a pre-planned vacation, so he's not here.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get too far into our meeting, I would like to take a moment to thank somebody who has really made a big contribution to Sylvania Township. Over the last 14 years, Susan Wood has really jumped in and done whatever the township needed.
And Susan, come on up.
And today the township is a much better place for all of her efforts and talents, and we sadly miss her, but we certainly wish her the best in retirement. So I would like to read this proclamation. Whereas Susan Wood will officially retire on May 25th, 2017, after 14 years of outstanding and meritorious service to the residents of Sylvania Township, and whereas Susan Wood began employment with the township on January 27th, 2013 as assistant administrator, later promoted to assistant administrator and HR director on May 18th, 2011, whereas during her 14-year tenure, she has worked with 10 trustees, 2 fiscal officers, and 4 administrators. And whereas Susan Wood was instrumental in the implementation of the wellness program, personnel policies, and online HR employee services. Now therefore be it proclaimed that we, Sylvania Township Board of Trustees, take this opportunity to express our sincere and grateful appreciation to Susan Wood and hereby extend our congratulations on her well-earned retirement. Thank you for everything. You'll be blessed. Congratulations. Good luck. Last meeting. We go out with a bang. I'd like to offer the May 2nd regular meeting minutes.
So moved?
We'll call the roll. Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda this evening?
I do not.
I would like under administration to add ADP, a brief discussion. And then I would like also to go into a little bit of the Sylvania Rec developments.
Okay.
Do we have hearing of the public on agenda items only? Anyone sign in? Okay.
Got some friends here coming.
That brings up the zoning department.
Good evening.
Evening, Darrell.
The monthly report for zoning for the month of April. We Under permits, we issued 46 permits for the month. That's a 24% increase over last year. And that was an estimated value of just under $4.9 million, and that was almost a 121% increase over last year. Year to date, we're at 136 permits issued, 8% increase, and a $29 million estimated value. That's almost 191% increase year to date. Next page, please, Scott. Single-family dwelling permits. Again, we're continuing to roll along on those. Year to date, we're at 34. That's a 21% increase. And estimated value is $12.25 million, and that's 88.5% increase over last year. Then I've added a new column, and that is approximate estimated value per dwelling. And for this year, we're at $360,000 estimated value per dwelling, and that is 55% increase over last year's. On the next page, we have our zoning complaints for the month of April. Those are also up, 21 complaints for the month. That's a 320% increase over last year. And year to date, we're at 81 with a 161% increase. And then the few notes below that, I'll let you read at your convenience. Meetings of the zoning department. Board of Zoning Appeals had 4 cases last month. 2 were approved, 2 were denied. Zoning Commission heard the 3 text amendments that the trustees approved 2 weeks ago. The Zoning Commission recommended approval of all 3 of those. There were no project plan review items. And then on the last page of my monthly report, just a few items to note. Some new businesses and new commercial development in the township. Core Life Eatery on Monroe Street. That's in front of Target. It's it's a chain, fresh food made from scratch for healthy, active lifestyles. Sylvania Fit Body Boot Camp. This is I always refer to it as a Scrambler Marie shopping center. That's what everybody knows it as. And we're also going to be getting a Domino's in there, too. So that kind of compensates for the fit body, I guess. Cycle Works coming in on New West Road at the corner of New West and King, and that's the former Fastenal site. This will be the 3rd bike shop for this chain. And then Walmart is adding a new online pickup site where you order your groceries or other items online and then pull up, and I guess they bring them out to your car. 2 other items down there. The Lucas County Plan Commission heard the zone change request and conditional use request for the Assurance Health Senior Psychiatric Hospital, proposed Senior Psychiatric Hospital on King Road. And then we received a zone change request for 2854 McCord Road and 2903 Wilford Drive. That's south of Central. They're looking to construct 50 villa-style apartments, similar to the Colony Apartments that are on McCord Road. They've resubmitted the request as an R3 PUD, and that will be heard by the Plan Commission on June 28th rather than May 24th. And that's all I have for the monthly report.
Thanks, Darrell.
And I do have one resolution. It's 17054. It's authorization of abatement for high grass for the property at 6047 Red Oak Drive.
I'll offer resolution 17-054, authorize of abatement of property at 6047 Red Oak Drive for high grass.
Second.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darrell.
Rob?
Good evening. I submitted the monthly report for April in front of you. Highlight some key points. We did complete the Spring cleanup, as stated previously, it was probably 50% more product out there than normal due to the March windstorms we had. You can see the loads we collected. Did some tree trimming and site distance clearing from signs and fire hydrants and other areas within the right-of-way. We started our routine mowing for right-of-way and islands that we still maintain, and we received our final 400 tons of salt for our summer fill-up through the ODOT co-op program. Did some cleanup at the Association Cemetery for Mother's Day and did some straightening of markers and headstones as well. Service Department completed the repairs on Vehicle 25. That vehicle was the one that was in the rear end incident, and returned that back to service. And then you can see all the other vehicles with the miscellaneous repairs as well. The maintenance did their indoor range cleanup for the lead and the annual backflow and fire suppression maintenance system, and some other minor repairs as well. On page 2, major project that started May 12th is underway. See the OPWC resurfacing, so that'll be in next month's report, but just to give you a heads up that it does encompass a fair amount of properties in the St. James Wood area and also Parliament Square and some commercial roads as well on there. That's all I have. If you have any other questions on the project list we've started.
Well, busy summer. Hopefully the weather cooperates this year.
Yeah, so far we're off to a good start. No rainouts yet. So.
Good.
Thanks, Rob.
Nothing else?
Thank you, Rob.
Good evening. Presented to you was the April 27th monthly report from the fire department. I'll go through the first couple pages. Obviously, the numbers there I'm sure you've looked at. Year-to-date totals were up probably almost 100 runs fire-wise, and we're up almost 150 runs EMS-wise. That's page 2 and 3. Page 4, mutual aid and automatic aid given and received. We received automatic aid 4 times. We gave automatic mutual aid 8 times. Springfield had a heavy month of fires, so we spent a little bit of time in Springfield this past month. So next page, page 5, will be the Medic 61. As you see, we had 53 incidents. 35 were transported, and 10 were private auto, pretty much choice of the person at the scene, and then we had 8 canceled. Community risk, we had the mock accident for juniors and seniors. This year we had to have both schools together because they put a new field and that in at Northview, which we cannot land the helicopter, we cannot drive the fire trucks on the track. So we got together with the schools and Deb Cheney at SCAT, and we bused Northview's kids to Southview. We had 1,800 and some students for the mock accident this year. We added a couple cars and a few more injuries, and I think it went really, really well, and I think we got our point across. We did after prom for Southview. We did a senior health fair at the Sylvania Senior Center. Myself and Chief Freilich, we went to the Northwest Ohio Council disaster drill at Flower and participated in that. He was pretty busy with his plans and final inspections. The state changed their inspectors for Lucas County, so the last couple months we've had to struggle to get them here, but the new guy's in place, so Mike was able to get a few more done this month with the state, and then also with putting that gentleman in fire prevention he was able to meet the state when Mike wasn't, so that worked out really well. As far as Lucas County EMS continuing education, we had 248 hours. As far as regular fire training, we did truck company operations with all 4 stations, all 3 shifts. And we also continue to work with our new computer system, the emergency reporting software, which is going very well, by the way. My overtime, total of 282.92 hours for the month. When you see the recall for fire, that's the 2 hours where I called people back for our somewhat hazmat incident that we had at New England Lane Apartments.
we had Toledo Fire and their hazmat unit in. I had to backfill one of the engine houses so that I had coverage there while we were there. And by the way, the Toledo chief called and said that they were very impressed with our department having things 3/4 of the way done before their hazmat technicians even went into the building. So kudos to the guys. Page 9, there's a thank you from an elderly couple, Lieutenant Rod Standerford and his crew. Helped them, and it was really hard to, that's about how small it was written on the card also. It's really hard to read, but she was very appreciative of over and above that the crew did for her. That's what I have for monthly report. I do have 2 resolutions. First one is Resolution 17056. This is to certify our lieutenant promotional list. We had 15 guys take it, 7 passed. And these are the scores of the top 7. And per the contract, I'm allowed to interview the top 5 for one position, and I have the interviews scheduled for Thursday and Friday this week so we can get that lieutenant promoted. That would be the Phil Deputy Chief Nye, who moved up from lieutenant to deputy chief, so that's what this list is for.
I'll offer Resolution 16056 certifying the lieutenant promotion list.
Second.
Calling the roll, Mr. Genowine.
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney.
Yes.
And my second resolution is 17-057. This is authorize myself to extend an offer of employment, and this would be, we moved Chris up, we moved a guy from the floor of a private into a lieutenant, and then I need to fill the spot on the floor. Then that will keep us at our number, 59. So
I'll offer Resolution 17057, authorizing the fire chief to extend offer of employment.
Second.
Mr. Mahoney.
Yes.
Mr. Genowine.
Yes.
thank you. Anything
Thanks,
further?
Chief.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hey, Chief.
You have before you the the monthly report for April, and I'll make this as brief as possible. Page 2, you can see our calls fielded by dispatch. Those calls, we need to start putting that total on there. Total 7,053 calls in a dispatch for the month of April. You can see the great majority of them are on the phone line directly to the police department, the 2055 number. Page 3, calls for service. You'll see up at the top, we are down slightly in our calls for service from 2016 year to date. We're down in our citations. I notice we're not getting nearly the complaints in the neighborhoods for some reason. Now, because I say that, I probably jinxed this, and we'll probably get a lot of them. But anyway, that's one reason the citations are down. Does knocking on wood help?
There's some here today to talk about it.
Yeah. And then as far as crash reports, we are down slightly with property damage accidents, and then we're up very slightly with our injury accidents. Offense reports of note, we're slightly down in our burglaries. We're down, of course, it's a very small number, so it's skewed very easily, but we're down in our robberies. We're up in our domestic violences. We're down in our assaults. A different trend for a change, we're down in our identity thefts, because that's a crime that is commonly increasing throughout the country. We are down in our OVIs, and overall thefts in reports we're down a decent amount. Page 4, our prisoner transports, you'll see that continues to be a pretty good deal for us in our cooperating with Sylvania City in transporting their prisoners as well as ours. That overtime reflects only the overtime incurred for having to transport Sylvania City arrestees. Page 5, detective caseloads. You can see that they were assigned 44 cases in the month of April, of which they cleared 25, leaving 19 active, and they cleared 18 from previous months for a total of 43 cases cleared. Page 6, we participated in the DEA drug take-back on Saturday, April 29th, as did the City Police Department and several local departments. I won't go over all those different items there, but the last item I want to make a comment on, and that was the SRT call out for the barricaded suicidal subject. I don't know if you saw the news that night, but Friday, April 21st, we had a very, very serious situation. And I just want to compliment our officers, but also the joint effort of Sylvania City and us. Our negotiator and Sylvania City's negotiator worked together. I was right there, right close to them the whole time. We were out there for 7 hours, from about 11 to 6 p.m. We had the SRT called out. Mommy assisted as a backup. Those guys are in that full gear, very uncomfortable for a very lengthy period of time. And we came up with the best possible resolution that we could have, because I really feel very strongly, and I won't get into all the facts and some of it kind of confidential, but I really feel that if we would have had to make an entry on that situation, that this person probably would have carried out his act. But we were able, through the negotiators, through the patience of the SRT, through a family member that was very instrumental in talking that guy out, to be able to talk him out peacefully. And I got a lot of compliments on that. It seemed like I can't go in Myers or Kroger's or someplace without seeing somebody I know, okay? And honestly, no exaggeration, within the first 4 days or so, I had about 10 compliments, including from Toledo's police chief, when I had a meeting down there that was congratulating on a good thing. And it's all due to their hard work and the job they did. Page 7, you can see our speed. Again, we're not getting many requests for the speed trailer at this point. I'm sure that'll pick up. Page 8, our detective assigned to the DEA task force, some of his activities. He also is our hostage negotiator. So you'll see he includes that. Page 9, just court fines and such, and or revenue into the department from court fines. And then page 10, we totaled 197 hours of overtime. I will tell you the detective hours are up just a little bit. We did experience more call-outs. We had a couple of burglaries, and then we had one detective on a very significant rape trial that resulted in a conviction. But that included quite a bit of preparation time, and he was over about 4 days in a row down at Common Pleas. And then the dispatcher overtime, as you know, we're down one dispatcher at this point since April 28th. So that's only a couple of days in April, I realize. But and as summer comes, we don't incur a ton of overtime. Thankfully, lots of people take it in comp, and then that doesn't usually end up costing us overtime. But in the summer here, especially in dispatch, we may experience more of that. And then, actually, I have one resolution, and that will be Resolution 17052. I would request the board to certify the dispatch active hiring list and authorize the hiring of a dispatcher replacement. So if we receive that authorization from you, we'll start moving on backgrounds.
I'll offer Resolution 17052 to certify a dispatcher to your active hiring list.
Second.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Dunaway?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chief. Nice
Appreciate
job
it.
on the standoff.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Greatly appreciate it.
Yep.
My resolution has to do with the police department. It's authorizing the township administrator to execute safety township staff contracts. There's 3 people we hire to run the safety town, an aide, a teacher, and a coordinator, and this authorizes me to sign the contracts with them. The aide will be paid $122.50 total. The teacher, $295, and the coordinator, $385.
I'll offer Resolution 17051 to authorize the administrator to execute safety township contracts.
Second.
Mr. Dunaway?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
At this time, Trustee, do you want to talk about the ADP discussion?
Where are we at with that? Have you
We have, Susan, could you come up a second? We have contacted, and I'll let Susan do the talk. We have contacted a company that uses ADP and asked them the good points and bad points, and they gave us a lot of insight to it. You want to discuss our phone call we had with?
Yeah, I decided to call the Highland Group, which is our broker for our health care, because I knew that they used ADP, and they have used it for a number of years, so I thought that might be a good person to contact. Also, they have a consultant under contract out of Florida that does analyze all these different HR payroll contracts to see, they know which ones are better than others in certain areas. At the end of the conversation with that person, he did not recommend that we make a switch at this time. He asked me to begin with, what was my satisfaction level with the current carrier. And I said probably about an 8. And his recommendation is to not switch unless you are at a 5 or below. And then I guess when he found out that I was retiring, he said absolutely that would be the worst time to make a switch. She doesn't know this system, let alone switching over to the next to know what to switch over. So, like I said, I did talk with the Highland Group, their HR director there, on what they use it for. Many of the things that ADP offered us, they don't use either. So, I'm wondering, would we take advantage and use some of those features, or are they just not user-friendly? So I guess our recommendation at this point would be to hold off maybe another year and then try to tackle the timekeeping piece and the payroll at the same time.
I'm going to direct Mr. Zeitler at this time to get working on the time piece. I sat through 2 grievances and a public information request, all on timekeeping and record keeping, and what we do here is atrocious.
We are...
to keep track of overtime and stuff on a dry erase board for a township that's $20-some million budget is, pathetic. So get something going. I'm not saying it has to be ADP, but I want something proposed here within 30 days.
We'll do. And
Okay.
I understand the part you're talking about. We've already started with the police department.
The record retention laws are not being complied with. The logs, the police officer logs, are supposed to be destroyed within a year. We go back multiple years. Again, we just have a lot of record-keeping things. I thought this was a good solution. If you guys aren't on board, that's fine. But I want a solution from you then.
Right. And I'm not saying we're not on board.
You have to take some time off some of the other boards you're on and focus here. But I want something soon.
Gotcha.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'd like to go to Sylvania Rec.
Or did you want to hear Dave's fiscal officer?
Did you add? Well, I
you're
added
open
that
discussion.
under the administrator as well.
Okay, no problem.
I got a call from a Gordon Kohler, and I'd like him to speak on behalf or get his explanation of his knowledge of Sylvania Rec. Then I've got a few other things that I'd like to add to it once he's finished. Sir, could you step up to the mic and state your name and address?
Gordon Kohler, 4622 Country Walk, Sylvania, Ohio. I've been a resident, I'm looking up there now because I remember Lucy Lasky, Bruce Warham, and Judy Young. That's when I was around.
Good people.
So I'm probably one of the older people here
Good
right
people,
now.
yep.
And I was the youngest then, probably. I am here. I'm looking for answers. I'm not here to cast any dispersions, make any conclusions, or anything. The recreation program, which is a 501c3, is run very well. That's what they're under, to provide amateur sports. That's how they're a 501c3. They do a wonderful job. Baseball programs, basketball, indoor soccer, outdoor soccer. I'm not here to talk about how those are run or anything like that. What I am here to do is to get some answers in terms of where things are in terms of fiscal responsibility and budgeting. What woke me up, or what brought me here, was when I read an article in the paper that said there was a contract for a $400,000 consulting fee for Ken Catafias for 5 years. Now, to me, that's a lot of money for anybody. If you take a look at it and you break it down, which I did, let me get my numbers here so I have them correctly. If he works 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 5 years, every one of those days, including holidays, I didn't pull the holidays out, he would be making over a little over $38 an hour in consulting fees, which isn't too bad. I don't think he lives in this area anymore. I don't know. But I would like to know, because I think it's important to know, and I don't know who's paying it. If it's levy money, I have a real problem with it. But there are so many interwoven things going on, I don't know anymore. I would like to see the contract. I would like to know how many hours he's working, what he's paid for, and what he's consulting for. I'm not sure why he's consulting. Recreation District and Recreation has been around a long time in Sylvania. They have, it's running well. I'm not sure what it's consulting about. But to me, that's a lot of money. If it's levy money, that is wrong. And somebody needs to look into it. So I'd like to know exactly what's going on there. Also, I understand that, and I don't know if this is correct, that there's been no income tax filed with the IRS. Under Section 990, if 501c3 makes over $50,000 a year, they're required to file a 990 form with the IRS. Well, there's also a 990EZ, which is easy if they want to file that. So I would like to know, and that goes back 3 years, and that's also, and I'm asking, I don't know if the township trustees are the one or somebody else, I would like to see those, and those are available to the public. I don't want the form sent to me because I have to pay for copying fees, and I don't want to do that. But I would like to sit down and take a look at the past 3 years to see where the money's going, how it's spent, etc. By the way, the other thing I'm interested in is Centennial Terrace. When it started out, there was no recreation district. So it was managed by Sylvania Community Services. Jim Sini, who had the vision, bought that from the county for $1 and decided, gee, wouldn't this be nice if we could do something for the kids in the community again? Because we tried a teen center at one time, too. Wouldn't it be nice if we could do something in the community, fix it up? County didn't want it. It was in disarray. So we took it, or Jim took it, and they started to fix it up. Johnny Knorr was there at that time, and he was worried that he was going to get booted out. So we had to work with him to assure him, I mean, he'd been there a long time, to assure him that he would still have his times there and be able to play. That was done. The concession stand was run by kids at that time. There was no professional. We had talked to the owner of the Village Inn, and I forget what else he owns, and we were considering having him operate it because he was a professional, and we were going to work on a contract, and then he was going to give us money, give us so much money back, and that's how initially it was going to happen. I guess it's independent now. It was supposed to make money, and I understand that it's at the mercy of weather also. What I do not understand is I heard, again, I can't verify these facts, that it lost $120,000 last year. Okay? Why? I don't know. The other thing I heard is that Mr. Catafias was using somebody in Florida to put the contracts together for the entertainers there. Why you need another person, I don't know. Johnny Norris contracts were worked out. There was nobody involved. If you go on the internet, you can find 1,000 different contracts on how to contract with an entertainer. Not a big deal, including all the riders that the entertainers require, which is, they may require so much in beverages, so much in food, how you set up, and all these types of things. Why somebody is getting paid from Florida to do a contract is totally beyond me when it should be done locally. So those are really my questions. I'd like to know some more about Centennial Terrace, how it's functioning. I certainly want to know about the $400,000. I would hope as citizens of Sylvania, I guess I know you all are, that's your levy money. And if we're using levy money for $400,000 for consulting fees, that's excessive. That should go to the recreation, that should go to the kids. These people are paying to have their kids in these programs. These programs aren't free. They're very expensive. And this excludes TAMO, because TAMO was never, unless it is now, I don't know, was never under the recreation district. It was I don't know how that corporation was run, but it was a corporation of some type, but I'm not entirely clear. So, gentlemen, that's really what I'm interested in, and I hope I can get some of these answers. If you have any questions for me now, I'd be glad to answer them.
Well, thank you. Mr. Burrell, I sent you an email on April 25th asking for an answer whether these organizations are compliant with their state and federal reporting, and I didn't get a response to it. I did get an email on Thursday saying you're done with this effort and you think you've satisfied Resolution 17-020. I'm trying to understand what fiduciary responsibility does our representative that sits on this board and Sajard, and also the 3 representatives that we appoint, what fiduciary responsibility do they have to tell us, the citizens of this community, whether these organizations are compliant?
The resolution that the board adopted asked the prosecutor's office to make public records requests of the rec district, Sajard, in order to determine if the other 2 entities, TAMO and Sylvania Rec, were subject to the Public Records Act. That was the email I sent out, I believe, on May 9th, where I made that analysis. That was the only thing the trustees asked us to do, and that's what we did. That's what we concluded doing. And absent any other additional instructions from the board, I can't answer the question about fiduciaries. I'd have to look into that a little more. But I was not asked to do that by the board, so we have not done that.
We did ask you to look at the financial relationship between Sajard and the other 2 entities. And what is your determination there? And that's why I think a real quick and easy answer is, are they compliant? And that way a lot of us would feel a little bit better if they did answer yes. That hey, maybe they are getting, but certainly when the Blade article lists that they get audited every year by a private auditing company, that doesn't cut the mustard. And I think everybody in this room knows that, hey, we might use an accountant, but we then file taxes as well, or file with the state auditor's office. What these organizations have provided these are the things we don't do. What do you do? And are you compliant with state and federal reporting? And I'm asking you to find out that answer as our attorney. And Mr. Mahoney, as a board member of Sajard, if they do come back non-compliant, this could go against you personally. Because you are aware that there's issues here.
John, you are so... That's sad. You appointed me this 3 months ago. You appointed me, John.
No. Hey,
John,
Mr. Crandall asked you to sit on that board.
And you voted yes.
1 week after.
John.
1 week after the state notified me they didn't audit it.
John, the Attorney General supposedly is going to be looking into it. It's out of our... It's not... I
want to know for us.
John, can I talk without you interrupting, please? It's so rude of you to do that.
Okay,
I gave you 3 options last month, and I gave you 3 options the month before. Call the police and file a criminal complaint. Okay? Number 2, hire your own attorney out of your pocket instead of us as taxpayers paying for...
What are we paying for?
I don't know. We pay John Burrell.
We do?
Yeah, okay.
A flat salary.
We're paying him. And he should be focusing on other things in the township besides your little project. And number 3 is, I said call the Attorney General, which the Attorney General is involved, from what I understand from an email from John Burrell. Is that correct, John? So why are you asking me, a 3-month board member that you unanimously approved? I've never sat on this board, so don't try to throw me into a corner that I have no clue about. I've attended 3 meetings.
You know what, Mr. Mahoney? A couple of years ago, I went out and asked someone to sit on that board. I have emails documenting that you reached out to him and asked for him to withdraw his name. So I'm starting to see that there's some sort of connection here, that you're somewhat tied into this.
So-
and that person runs the Huntington Center and would have been a great addition to the board. I'm wondering why you reached out to him and asked him to withdraw his name for consideration. And I've got an email from him telling me that you reached out to him.
I don't know, John. Maybe because I'm just a really mean person. I just
No,
want to hurt the
no,
township, and I don't want to hurt the state. I'm on a witch hunt like you are with Sager. Hey, John Burrell. The bottom line is this isn't on the agenda.
I added it.
You when? Just now?
Yes.
Okay. So can you please, John? I am done. We've passed a resolution. We've asked for the public records. They've been provided to you, to me, to everybody involved. The Attorney General's involved.
I've got Baron Black on tape from April. Let me see.
Here comes your numbers and fuzzy dates.
No. I got. You want to hear that? I got Baron Black
Don't
saying
John,
that they state that they get audited by the state.
John, you're embarrassing yourself in front of this.
I'm not, Neil. I stand up, and I think the voters of this community want to know, and they're going to hold you accountable as a board member.
That's fine. I have no problem standing up to. Believe me, the attorney.
Well, why won't you ask?
I am more than happy.
Why won't you ask that board if they are compliant with filing their taxes and/or reporting with the state and federal jurisdictions? Will you ask them that? I asked you to do that on February 8th.
Fritz Byers is handling it. I'm not an attorney. Fritz Byers is handling it on behalf, and let him work with the Attorney General.
I've got
and
Fritz on tape as well, and he's promised me about a dozen documents, and here we are 6 weeks later, and nobody's calling me, and John Burrell's washing his hands of it.
I gave you 3 options. Call the police, pay for it out of your pocket, or have the Attorney General.
Well, Mr. Mahoney, I'm putting you on notice that now you're involved as a board member, and if there is fiduciary responsibility that could come back, it's not going to be covered
That's
by
fine,
your...
John. I'm completely comfortable with it.
Okay.
And I would look. And one last thing, I do hope you. Once we find out, I'm willing to stand behind whatever we find out from the Attorney General. But I'm not going to have someone like you that's been working on this 4.5 years that really has a bunch of half data and expect the public to accept what you're saying. It's so not true.
What is the dilemma with saying? What is the dilemma of saying
whether
they're compliant or not?
I'm done talking about it, John. The Attorney General's got a lot more stripes than John Burrell does. Let's see what they have to say. Enough said.
Can I make one correction or one comment? The money you pay for township law services doesn't go to me. It goes to the county. So I'm not paying anything extra for that.
I'm glad you said that. Thanks.
Mr. Seymour, would you like to add?
I would.
Please come up and state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Brett Seymour. I'm a township resident and have been for the last 16 years. I find it somewhat embarrassing that we can't get real records from the SageR board. We don't have them. They won't proof them to all of us as community members. They take money from me in the township, from the city, from all Sylvania City residents, and from the schools. My kids play sports in all these programs. We deserve, as citizens, to be shown all the financial documents. So where are they? Why won't the SageR board provide them? What are they hiding behind? What are they afraid of? We deserve to know. So I'm asking you, Neil, and I called your office before the meeting about 6 weeks ago and said, I want you to vote for this. And you voted for it.
Yes.
Now you're backtracking.
I'm not backtracking. What we asked for, Mr. Seymour, was public records documents of all the documents for the SageR board.
No, what we asked for was whether these guys...
I'm having a conversation with him. Would you please give me the respect?
Certainly,
the respect, and then you can jump in anytime you want afterwards. Okay. So what I said is that we're going to pull the public records request as a township, and I wanted to see it, to provide it, to make sure there was nothing hidden.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not at financial analysis. I look at a lot of numbers at my job, but I don't look at those. I mean, there's a lot of different entities to that group.
There are.
And so when we got that paperwork, it was provided to the trustees. It's public record, so you can certainly ask for it yourself. I know they've got plenty of them there.
Well, I actually made a request to some people at Place Sylvania, and they won't provide them.
Okay.
They said they would provide them to you. They wouldn't provide them to me.
Well,
why can't we, as township residents, get it from you? If you've got it, why can't you provide it to me?
You certainly can. You could also get it from the city of Sylvania and the school system, who are else partners.
If it was that easy, why has it been so difficult for a township trustee, Mr. Genuine, to get it? It shouldn't be that hard.
I'm
If
not
it's
sure.
that easy,
I think the Attorney General.
we could have
will tell
got
us
it 4 years ago.
I think hopefully the Attorney General gets us to the bottom of this and we can move forward.
Well, maybe what we should do is suspend the funding to SageYard for their little projects from the township in lieu of getting the documents provided to us. Maybe we shouldn't give them our tax dollars until they provide us the information.
Well,
Again, I don't understand.
the Attorney General has it. I mean, I'm not going to sit
I'm not
here.
waiting for anybody else. We have the ability to force them to tell us whether they are compliant on their tax reporting,
Pay
and
for it,
they're
then.
refusing to acknowledge that request.
So when Mr. Genowine's term ends, who's going to take up this fight? You? Do I have to come to every meeting to take up the fight?
I don't know if there's even a fight yet. We don't know what we don't.
Well, because they won't provide the documents. That's the issue.
And Mr. Burrell, have they provided the documents for the SageYard, please?
First of all, the township does not fund SageYard.
Thank you.
They're a taxing
Number two.
authority. They put their own levy on the ballot. You do not put that on the ballot. They produced a significant amount of records, which we did not copy because there were too many of them. I don't want to pay for the copies. Mr. Genowine did, at that meeting, ask for additional records, and he is correct. They have not produced those records yet. But SageYard, which is the political subdivision, did produce a significant amount of records.
That you requested, not I
That I requested, correct, that I requested.
That we requested.
Well,
The-
John
well,
Burrell
the other
requested
time.
them to
Yeah.
find out what type of
Right.
entity they were.
Right.
Some of the problem people are having is they're confused. They're mixing and handling as one the three entities. There's three separate entities. SageYard, which is the rec district, which is the political subdivision, and has always agreed that they are subject to the public records. There's the two private entities, the rec district and TAMO Shanner, which are private nonprofits, which may or may not be subject, as I outlined in my email. They will be subject to the Public Records Act for some things, documents that are created to carry out a public function. The rec corporation, SRC, was created to assist SageYard. So most of their records are going to be subject to public records. TAMO's a little more removed, although TAMO certainly.
A question regarding that, they're actually not removed. And they're not removed because if they take their primary funding from taxpayers, it doesn't excuse them from public records. And if they are truly a nonprofit corporation, they have to file a 990, and that's a public record. There are no 990s filed on record for the past 15 years.
Okay.
And that's neglect on SageYard's behalf and on behalf of the township trustees for the past 15 years. If they haven't done that, they're in violation of federal law and local law, and they're taking my money to do it.
Okay. Accepting public funds by itself is not enough to subject you to the Public Records Act.
percentage, it is.
Or it is not. There's no set percentage. Or every business in the world that deals with the government would be subject to the public records. The document has to be has to be tied to carrying out a public function, whether that's 1 cent or $1 million. So that's what you have to look at. It's not what they're getting, not how they got the money, but what are the documents created? Do they document the carrying out of a public function? For most private businesses, they do not. When you guys buy paper clips and you pay the ABC paperclip company, none of those documents but your check are going to be public records on behalf of the private business. Just because you do business with the government doesn't make it subject to public records. TAMO's a little more removed because their history predates SageYard. They go back to the 70s, or actually the late 70s, when TAMO was first built. There's a long history about what happened to them, how Sylvania Savings Bank took them over. Then the city of Sylvania took over the facility. That building is still owned by the city of Sylvania. So many of the TAMO records, if they pertain to the running of that building, are going to be public records. Which, forget TAMO, just go to the city of Sylvania and get them. I've talked to the law director, Leslie. She will provide those records. TAMO now is connected with SageYard because they put in some of those extra fields that they put in, so they accepted funding for that. So.
They're also
Any
owned by
documents-
Sylvania Rec. They
TAMO
have the same employer identification number.
They are three-
There's only one way two entities can have the same employer identification number, if that is a wholly owned subsidiary. So I would think the fact that they are owned by Sylvania Rec, they should also be compliant with any requests for records, which they have never done.
I don't know why they have the same tax ID number.
Well, why don't we look into that? You were supposed to look into that.
They have their own separate. They're separately incorporated into nonprofit. They have their own documents. Long before there was a SageYard or Sylvania Rec, they were incorporated. However, they do have the same board. All three entities share the same board. And much of the problem with this, because those boards themselves mix the three entities. So when you say, or someone says, who audits them, and you were told that the state audits them. The state doesn't audit private entities. They will audit SAGEARD, which is a public entity, which is a political subdivision. They will not audit the Sylvania Rec or Tamil because they are not public entities.
Mr. Brill, that's a fact, but they have to file a 990 if they don't get audited by the state as a public entity. They're a nonprofit. They would have to file an IRS 990, and they have
And they
for
don't.
15 years because we've asked. And it's public record to get a 990 from a nonprofit.
You can be
It doesn't exist.
Nonprofits can be exempt from filing 990s.
If they get audited by the state.
These two just happen to be exempt from it.
If they get audited by the state.
Which is
correct?
happening, right? We got the Attorney General involved.
You know what, Neil? I'm not waiting for anybody. I think the
they should
decisions
be
are
providing it.
here
We're the
in our
citizens
lap.
paying
Let's
the
make
rent.
them.
John,
Yes, sir.
the person that could clear this up for you,
He's on the payroll for $400,000, ain't he?
sitting at the end, we filed in the creation of SAGEARD.
Okay, we've had enough of this. That is so unfair, Mr. Kohler.
Well, you know what, Neil? There's a book out
We're
that's
gonna move on.
Pathways to Freeways of Parks in
We're moving
Sylvania.
on.
And
We're
his
moving
name
on.
is all over it.
We're
No,
moving
we're
on.
not. No, we're not. We're still talking. As a board member,
Dave, I'm
Neil,
going to take a recess here. Can we take a recess?
Yeah, you can.
This is not fair. This is not right. This is embarrassment. I'm
this
not going to
is
sit here
a
and listen to
township
this.
trustee is shirking his responsibility. Hey, I'll take that. If you want to get up and walk out, we can adjourn the meeting, Mr. Mahomes.
I don't want to adjourn. I just want to
But
take
you want to sit here and say police, roads, and fire as you sit on a levy committee for Olander and you know run around and give out money through CIC, and now you only want to focus on police, roads, and fire. No, I'm calling you out.
Go ahead. You can call me out. It's fine.
Good.
It's
Well, you've got a lot of people here
it's sad.
wondering why you're sitting
It's
here.
sad. I'd like, if I ask the public how many people know what the Attorney General does, I mean, the Attorney General is that is like.
I think let's ask the public if
Mr.
they want
Mahoney,
to know if
Mr.
our
Mahoney,
practice
So hold on.
is
So
in-
without-
is
The
in
Ohio
compliance.
Attorney General could take 2 to 4 years to even make their first investigation.
So I'm gonna
That's an embarrassment if we think that we're going to just continue to fund an organization that won't provide us proper documentation to make all of us comfortable that they're spending our money. Because remember, the taxing authority takes the money from all of us, so they're spending our money in ways that we may not agree with. And
I don't know
if
the
they
answer.
weren't embarrassed about the way they were spending the money, they'd produce the documents. It isn't that difficult.
I'd like. Well, I don't have the answer for that. I don't know how long.
But
it's
you
gonna
have the
take.
ability to get the
I
answer.
do not have the ability to get.
You
it.
do.
You're on the
You're
board,
the trustee.
Neil. You're on the board.
There are 3 of you that have the responsibility to get the documentation for all of us. And you're one of them.
Well, there's really 3 options. As a township, we do not. As a township, you can. Well, did I mention you could talk to the school board or the city of Sylvania?
Yes.
You can file a criminal.
I intend to go to
I'm not
both.
asking anybody else. We're leaders in this community, and I want to lead. I want to get an answer. And I don't know why you don't go to Weber O'Brien and ask them what they do with their financials. Where do they file them? I even emailed you the link, Mr. Burrell, didn't I? What about the guy running for judge? Is the attorney for them? Why doesn't somebody ask them what they do with their financials? I mean, that's a simple answer.
Ask who?
Ask Weber O'Brien,
On behalf of what entity?
Sylvania Rec and Tamil Shanner. What do they do with their financials? Do they submit them to the state?
They do
they
not-
submit them to...
They do not submit them to the state.
Okay,
Private
I
entities
provided
don't.
that documentation, but Baron Black, the finance director for Sylvania Rec, on April 12th, told me that they do.
He's thinking of SAGEARD, not Sylvania
No,
Rec.
I specifically said it, and I've got it on tape twice, where he told me Sylvania Rec gets audited by the state.
Sylvania Rec does, yes, not the Rec District. SAGEARD does, not Sylvania Rec or Tamil. Private entities are not audited by the state. Only political subdivisions.
So what do they do?
What do they do?
What do they do with their financials?
They would be like any other private corporation. They hire the auditors to come in and audit them and whatever their reports are. Some reports were actually, you gave me some of their financials actually. Some of their reports are there. I wasn't with you when you went through the records, so I'm not sure what they produced there. But they produced a significant amount of records. I don't know if you had them copied or not. I did not want to have them copied because I didn't want the township to have to pay for those. So Sylvania, the SAGEARD, the public entity, did produce a significant amount of documents. So it's not fair to them to say they didn't produce anything. They certainly did.
So they were the documents you requested.
Those are
not
documents
that
I
I
requested. I included in my document request everything that you had suggested. In fact, I cut and
There was
pasted.
only two things that were to determine whether they should file or follow the Freedom of Information Act.
I asked for documents so I could determine whether the Rec Corporation and TAMO had to follow, were subject to the Public Records Act. I made that judgment, and that was in my memo, my email to you of May 9th.
And we still haven't heard from Mr. Byers on whether they're going to comply with my request.
I have requested.
that I have on tape.
I have requested from Mr. Byers twice. I reminded him of that, of
And what
your
was his
request.
response?
Both times I really didn't get a response.
Okay. And that's the type
Not
of
a
response
yes or
I've
no.
gotten for 5 years, Neil.
But I can follow up on that.
Okay.
I'd be
Well,
more than
also, I want to know what they do with their financials. I think that's a fair question and an easy answer.
We're talking about Sylvania Rec or TAMO now, right?
Both.
We're not talking about Sageyard.
Right.
Okay. All right. I want to make sure we separate those two entities. They're two very different classes of entities.
I'd be more than happy to
That would be
provide
great. That would be great. And we'll follow up at one of the meetings in June.
John, could we request you that we get copies of their tax returns if they really file 990s? If
They don't. They've told me that.
I know they don't, but
Yes.
they're supposed to.
Yes.
So if they don't provide them and they're supposed to, we want to know why.
Yes.
And I'd like to know why, if they aren't filing tax returns and they're supposed to, why aren't they? And if they are filing them, let's get copies, although the IRS says they have them.
I mean,
we should get all their financial documentation by public record.
As Mr. Seymour mentioned, a state attorney general could take years, and we're continuing to write a check to Ken Catafias for $20,000 every 3 months. I think we could end this if we found out there's falsification in records or, some sort of tax fraud operation going on here. I think that's a fair assessment, that something is wrong.
I'm interested in the financial records from Centennial Terrace too, for all the events they have. Liquor sales. We don't show any cash receipts and profit from the sale of liquor and the sale of food and beverage at Centennial Terrace, which is an embarrassment. If they can't make money on beer, they can't make money. You always make money selling liquor. It's impossible not to make money selling liquor. From a gentleman friend who's in the liquor business, you have to make money when you sell beer.
Great.
And we should have access to all those records. If they're taking funding from us
Thank you for
to
your
run an
comments.
operation, we should have
Thank you for your comments. Let's move on.
You have anything?
Well, I'd like to know, again, I would like to see the company. If somebody's paying it, I'd like to see what the contract is.
That's great, Mr. Kohler. We've got a lot of other people that would love to speak and have been very patient in waiting for us here. I understand, but I have to take control of this just for a second here, if you don't mind, John. Just for a second. If you don't mind, we've got a lot of other folks I'd love to speak tonight. I think, and with all due respect, I appreciate your comments that you said earlier. And it sounds like I got a little bit of a homework assignment after 3 months on this board, but I'll find out and report back in June what my findings are. It may not be what you want to hear, Mr.
It's been
General,
5 months,
but-
Neil, and I asked you in February to find the same information out, and here we are, end of May, and you still haven't done anything. So
That's not true.
It is. Well, what'd you do then?
I'm not going to sit here and debate it.
Why don't you go? I listened to the meeting minutes on February 7th or
John.
8th,
Go ahead.
and I asked you to do it then.
It's fine. Let's just move on, please. For the public's sake, let's move on. Sorry, you guys have you've had to experience government in the right fashion here. I apologize. Let's move on. And let's get it on the agenda next time. We can certainly talk all night about it. But there
Well,
are
I
people
think they
here
knew it was on the agenda when Mr. Crandall called off on Friday, but we'll move on. All right, fiscal officer, you're up.
I don't know what Crandall calling off on Friday has anything to do with anything.
Well, that was the same day the Attorney General notified
right
Tam
now,
O'Shanter.
when someone has a vacation planned and they book air flights to leave, and they book those about a month in advance, and they just notify people that they're not going to be at the meeting as a courtesy to you, for you to try to draw insinuations from that's wrong, John.
Okay.
You take vacations too. You know that.
I do.
And so do other people on the board.
I also find, you know what, I stopped believing in coincidences a long time ago. I think it's a
Well,
good coincidence that
There's
Mr.
no
Crandall got off the
coincidence.
Sageyard board after serving on it for 3 years, and he still goes to plot meetings in Columbus, but he wanted off the Sageyard board for some reason, and asked Neil
about
Mahoney.
the Sageyard, and what you're talking about, and him wanting to get off the Sageyard board. What we're talking about right now is the insinuations that you're making that someone notified the board on Friday that they're not going to be here for this meeting when they scheduled the vacation over a month ago. It's not right for you to do something like that, and you know it.
That's when I got notified, Mr.
Well, you got
Simpson.
notified of that. So what? Someone scheduled a vacation, and for you to then take that and try to draw insinuations is wrong, and you know that. You shouldn't do that.
We'll see.
We'll see about what?
We'll see where this
we're
leads
done.
us.
We're done.
This
Here,
has
wait.
nothing to do with where this leads us. This has nothing to do with where this leads us. You're trying to make insinuations, and I would call out any one of the board members that did that to you
Yeah.
or to Neil. That's not right for you to do that.
We'll see.
Well, we'll see
So, let me
nothing
talk
about the
after.
vacation.
Let's
If
move
someone
forward.
has a vacation scheduled,
We'll
and
see.
then, like you've done that, no one makes insinuations about you trying to duck something.
I'm
which is
not
what you're
ducking
trying to
anything,
do.
as you know.
Well, you make a lot of insinuations and that about a lot of things, and I question that as whether that's appropriate. But I'm just dealing with Crandall, and that you shouldn't do that to someone, and you know that.
We'll see.
Well, fiscal officer now.
Yes, sir.
We have our month-end packet, and I'll keep this brief. We're only 3 months into the year. Our finances, our budgeted items are looking good. We're below budgeted items, and that we're doing well. Our expenses, more importantly, are less than what we've budgeted for. So the township is solvent financially. We're doing well at 3 months into the year. So that's really all I have on that report. And if you don't have anything, I think I have a resolution here. And the resolution is 17-051, authorize the township, that's the wrong one here. Resolution 17-055, an appropriation for unencumbered funds. And what we really have is we've received some insurance proceeds, hold in escrow pending demolition of a fire damaged residence. So we'll hold that money once it's demolished, and we'll issue the money out and pay for the demolition of it. We're holding it now. So that's what the resolution's about.
I'll offer Resolution 17055, appropriation from encumbered balance.
Second.
Mr. Genoway?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
That's all I have.
Okay. That moves us to open discussion. Do we have any?
I think there's a sheet.
Well, that is
Oh, yeah, we have
non-agenda
none.
items.
None for us. Right.
Okay. So now we move to the hearing of the public on non-agenda items. Mr. Wright.
Well, I hope this goes a lot better.
I apologize. You had to lift.
Oh, no apology
Sorry.
necessary. It's kept the crowd going. My name is Robert Wright. I live at 7532 Hollow Creek Drive. I will be one of 3 speakers unless some of our other neighbors would like to speak up. And my remarks tonight will be a little bit brief, as opposed to the past. On October 18th, 2016, I attended the first trustee meeting to introduce our concerns of offensive noise and exhaust fumes from the property at 2520 Heisler Road. We've attended subsequent meetings over the past 6.5 months, asking to enforce what appears to us as Kings Hollow residents a clear violation of the Township Noise Ordinance, and to date, nothing has changed. At the meeting on May 2nd, Mrs. Dolgen and I again requested your support, and there was supposed to be some work done in the background, and to date, we have no response. On Sunday, the property owner exercised his permission with the noise exemption granted him by the township. As witnessed by Chief Bomey, and Chief, thank you for coming out. If he has the time and he's allowed, I would like him to explain his impressions, and ours was it was excessive. Gentlemen, our patience has run out. As the property owner on Heisler clearly stated on Channel 13 on Sunday, he invited the big bikes, and he bragged that he has not been cited, and he accused us of being the harassers because we called the police. His open abuse of the permission and taunting of our observation on Mother's Day activities on the Heisler Road actions by riders spewing dirt on others, including us. In our opinion, he's relinquished his right to any further permits. It's an issue of, does one individual's rights to disturb the rights of 25 or 30 extra homes through noise, exhaust fumes? And all we want is just the current ordinance explained. We'd like you to back the police, that the citations can be issued. I would like to introduce Steve Collier.
Actually, I want to speak in the order that I signed up.
Oh.
Others are ahead.
Okay. Rachel?
Greg Commissary.
Well, I've got one more person from my neighborhood.
Okay, so then Brian Tetkowski. Is that I'm from Heisler? No. Oh, Stephen Collier. Lost Creek Drive.
Thank you, Robert.
And then,
I defer to the people that signed up earlier if they want to speak first.
Okay. She has to go. She's got to leave. So if you got 2 minutes, just
go ahead.
Come on.
Hi, I'm Rachel Wanner. I live at 2548 Hessler Road. Thank you for letting me come to voice my concerns. This has been... Sorry, I get nervous.
Don't relax. It's all good.
Yeah, the excessive noise is now affecting my children. I have an 8-month-old and I have a 2-year-old child. My 8-month-old is just getting over a sickness, and I can't keep him in his crib because he can't sleep on the weekends because of the excessive noise. His bedroom, where it is at, faces, I'm 2 doors down from where the track is, and it's really starting to affect my kids. Now the mom in me is really getting upset. It's more than just I can't sit on my back deck and talk at a reasonable voice volume anymore. Now my kids are not getting their naps, and it's affecting their peace, and it infringes upon my rights to enjoy my own property and to have my children have a peaceful atmosphere to live and to play. And it's excessive all the time. I don't know what else besides that to say, but thank you for letting me voice my concerns. I really don't know what else to do.
I'm sorry your 8th month isn't
Thank
feeling
you. He's
well, so
still getting
hopefully he gets better.
Thank you.
But thank you for coming up tonight, too.
Thank you.
I just want to say one more thing. This is a list of responses I've gotten from our neighbors. And if they could all show a hand of the support of what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish, so we can have peace and quiet in our neighborhood going forward. These people are supporting everything that we've done, and we want you to know that we're very concerned that the ordinance is not enforced as it should be. Thank you.
Mr. Collier.
Well, again, I think Greg and Brian signed up before me, and if they want to talk first this time with me. Okay.
Well, my name is Steve Collier. I'm a resident of the Kings Hollow subdivision. And in fact, we moved in there approximately 21 years ago. And in talking to the chief this weekend, everybody couldn't believe it's been that long that it's been there, but it has. And a few years back, we bought the lot behind us, which goes all the way back to Heisler. And so we are the adjacent lot to 2520, and then our home is the catty-cornered one to that lot. And over the last 2 years, the noise from 2520 Heisler has prevented my wife and I from enjoying our property. More specifically, dirt bikes, four-wheelers, and other vehicles adjacent on the adjacent property have created a nuisance and an annoyance. I was here previously and addressed you, and last year I believe it was, and I was the one that got up and said I was hopeful that a reasonable compromise could be reached. I have had conversations with Greg, I've had conversations with Brian, and others on Heisler Road. I'm the guy with the garden down there. And I've met a lot of people on Heisler, and I believe I get along with the people on Heisler. And our attempt at this compromise just simply hasn't worked. Last weekend, and about a month earlier, confirmed that. About a month ago, there was no permit issued to allow any exceptions to the noise ordinance of Sylvania Township, yet there were bikes and vehicles in the property, produced significant noise. It was an annoyance, it was a nuisance. And then last weekend on Mother's Day, it was even louder. I've never called the police on anybody at 2520 Heisler. I have simply tried to talk, but it has not worked. And then last Sunday on Mother's Day, I get home from church, and I see a vehicle parked out in front and then somebody walking through my yard. I go back and check, and it's a lieutenant with the Sylvania Township Police Department. Asked him what he was doing, and I said, yeah, it's fine to be here. And he wanted to see it for himself, to see what they're talking about. And he asked my permission to go onto the lot behind mine, the wooded lot. And as we were standing there, I believe he had a decibel meter of some sort, and we could barely hear each other talk at various times. And at one point in time, a dirt bike goes by and it spreads some mud on us. If that was the only thing that ever happened, we'd be pretty happy. So anyhow, two other officers came out later that day and had discussions with them, and then the chief came out. And as the chief and I were in the back part of our lot, it was difficult for us to have a conversation. In fact, I would have to wait to say what I was going to say in response to him until another bike went by. And Sylvania Township does have a noise ordinance. And the last time I was here, it seemed like there was some concern that how do we enforce that? Do you need to have a certain decibel reading? And I believe at that time I indicated I did not believe that you did. And I also looked up, there's a disorderly conduct statute in Ohio, and this isn't an ordinance, and it basically says no person shall recklessly cause inconvenience, annoyance, or alarm by doing any of the following, and it includes making unreasonable noise. And of significance is there was a case that was appealed to the Ohio Supreme Court, and the Ohio Supreme Court, in its opinion, indicated that this was not vague, and this reasonableness standard was appropriate, an objective standard. So, as I stand here today, you have a noise ordinance, you have a disorderly conduct statute that will clearly apply if it meets these requirements of the significant noise. I hope that the chief has a chance to address that. The lieutenant that was out there or the other officers. In fact, I mentioned the statute to one of the officers, and he said, well, this is clearly an annoyance. And that's when we're on our front sidewalk, way away from this. In any room in our house, you can hear it with all the windows closed. And the suggestion that perhaps you can have a permit to do this, I think, is even wrong. The statute that you've passed, or not you individually, but the previous administration passed, only provides an exception to get a permit if it's a public event, such as the fireworks out at the ball fields or whatever it is. Yeah, and I'm not bringing up that issue, so make me clear. Yeah. So anyhow, no more permits should be issued. The law should be enforced. And I would submit to you that if this noise level took place in St. James Wood, you would have 100 phone calls and there would be an immediate response. You might say, well, this is a little bit more rural setting. The same statute applies in Kings Hollow and on Heisler that applies in St. James Wood. I would also submit if it happened in any of your individual backyards, you would be on the phone to the chief as well. There are no, except in the state statute, there's no, the township trustees or the police department here can't grant an exception to the disorderly conduct statute. I mean, that would be unheard of. And it not only applies to the homeowner, it applies to anybody on the property that's conducting that causes the excessive noise. I truly, truly wish that this could have been worked out. I have a garden over there. I've tried to have positive conversations with all the people in Heisler and respect their rights. But civility has a place in this society. And it's time for the civility to be enforced in this neighborhood. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But I don't know anything about that one board you're talking about.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak on behalf of Kings Hollow neighborhood residents?
Can we get the chief's impressions of his?
Well, what I thought we would
Let
do
them
is
do
bring
it.
up the people from Heisler, give them their opportunity to speak, and then we'll bring in the chief and figure out where we can go from here.
I'll say one word.
Okay.
My name is Brad Igully. I'm president of the Kings Hollow Association. And as an association, we spend tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars every year just to beautify our neighborhood. So it holds its value. We want to enjoy it, but I always think, if I put my house on the market tomorrow, I would hope that someone would come in there and say, this is that neighborhood, that nice little neighborhood. And with what's going on now, I don't know if people are going to say that. And in regards to this last Sunday, I don't back up to the this property that we're talking about, like, say, right here. It was so loud. It reminded me of many years ago, I went to a racetrack in Eldora, Ohio, and it's a dirt track, and it's these special vehicles that fly around the dirt track, and it's pretty neat. And you sit there, and it's loud, and you get dirt balls on you. And this Sunday, our neighborhood sounded like the Eldora racetrack. I never heard anything like it. I told my wife, I said, come to the front door, and I said, listen to this. I said, it sounds like they've taken their mufflers off or something, because I've never heard an off-road vehicle or a little motorcycle or anything sound that loud. So it was ridiculous. So anyhow, that's all I want to say.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments.
Mr. Komisarek?
I have lived at this residence since...
You state your name and address, please.
My name is Greg Komisarek. My address is 2520 Heisler Road.
Okay. We just need that for the record. Thank you.
Okay. I have lived at this address since 1995. My parents purchased this house in 95. When the parents moved into the place in 95, we brought motor vehicles with us. Some of those vehicles are still in the barn at that house today. Up until this Sunday, the last 10 years or so, I have kept the big bikes out of that yard, the race bikes, that kind of thing. That this Sunday was an exemption permit. Exemption. We brought out the bikes that previously had been said to go ahead and leave those bikes home. Those were bikes that were built for the track, specifically for taking to a racetrack. That an exemption is an exemption. I have no problems without pulling a permit going ahead and sticking to the pit bikes, the small bikes, the kids' bikes. My son is 11 years old. I work a good number of hours myself. I get 1 weekend off every 4 weeks. That they're trying to give you the impression that this is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I had to take 4 hours of overtime off of work today to be here. It's costing me $175 to show up here today. That I was scheduled to work 7 in the morning to 7 at night. That I would still be at work for another 45 minutes and then a 45-minute drive home. That this is my short turn on my schedule as well. That this week on my day turn, I'm working 12 hours on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, working 16 on Wednesday. Saturday and Sunday, I'm working 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. My schedule next week will be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 7 in the morning to 11 at night. I leave at 6 in the morning to be to work by 7. That with that schedule, this is quite obviously not everyday deal, number one. And number 2, Sunday was an isolated incident with a permit to do so. If I have an exemption, it is exactly that, an exemption. That I have absolutely no argument that Sunday was excessive. That Sunday has been louder than it has ever been there. That the large bikes, the large bore bikes, that those are loud. There's absolutely no doubt about that. I am not in any kind of argument here over Sunday being excessive. That if my 11-year-old son wants to go out and ride his bike is quite honestly quieter than my lawnmower is, which, by the way, I have received visits from law enforcement for doing nothing other than cutting my grass. That one time in particular, the only thing that I had out of the barn was my lawnmower, which is a 721D Grasshopper, a commercial piece of equipment with full factory exhaust on it. I received a visit from law enforcement for cutting the grass.
How many children do you have?
I have one son.
Just one. And who typically rides on your property?
It depends on the scenario. That for covering myself, I do require a liability waiver. That go ahead and a few of my select friends and their children will come out and ride from time to time. That typically it is a Sunday, usually every 4 weeks. That my next 2 weekends off, I'm not available, so this will not be my next 2 weekends off. That this is clearly not an everyday thing like somebody's trying to lead you to believe.
You say on average, once or twice a week, or what?
I'm not sure that really matters, other than the noise. We got the noise.
Well, the other thing is that I have never been issued a sound ordinance violation of any kind. I can't tell you how many times the law has been called, how many times officers have been out there. They have been permitted to come onto the property on multiple occasions to verify that every bike on the property has full exhaust on it, including muffler. That I have never run a bike on that property that has not had a muffler. At some point, this is absolutely nothing short of harassment. That Sunday, absolutely no argument. Sunday was excessive. Sunday was an example of what it could possibly be. If I'm going to have to apply for permission to use my yard and I have an exemption to sound ordinance, an exemption is exactly that, exempt. That if we can come to some sort of agreement as far as we can run the little bikes, we can run kids around the yard without having an issue, I'm good with that. If we want to bring the big bikes out, I don't plan on doing that on a regular basis. That is something
Right.
that's...
I think we got the hint here. I appreciate your comments. I mean, just to keep things moving forward.
Do you have any other questions for me?
Not at this time. But we do have a Brian Tatkowski, I believe. Is he with you, sir?
He's a neighbor a couple doors down.
Okay.
There's a few others that did not make your signing sheet.
Oh.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Several of the... I had to take off work to be here, and several of the others are cutting into their work schedule to attend this meeting.
It is a difficult meeting to attend. I will agree to that.
My name is Brian Tatkowski. I'm at 2642 Heisler Road. There's no doubt in my mind Sunday was excessive. Obviously, this is why we're here today. As Gentleman Steve here has said in the past too, he has tried to work with us, and he's been more than fair, more than kind. I can understand everyone's side, everyone's point, and I'm not necessarily torn, but I think that there should be some sort of a resolution, some sort of a compromise. I feel like Greg believes that his rights are going to be completely taken away from him. I also understand the neighbors with the noise. However, as a witness on Greg's behalf, he was kind enough to take me in between houses and give me a place to stay, and I was there and I witnessed, firsthand being there. I have actually been the one that the police were called on for riding the mower, cutting the grass. It is to the point where no one has singly approached Greg and said, hey, listen, it's gone right past that. The neighbors have called the EPA on him when he cleaned the pond out, which he was kind of doing because it was starting to smell and it was getting kind of rancid and filthy. And he actually cleaned it up for the neighborhood here, so they didn't have to deal with it. So my point is, it is somewhat, I can understand both sides. He is getting called on 24/7, and it's half the time nothing's even getting fired up. So, a resolution, some way of everybody getting together and trying to sort through all of this, not take Greg's rights away, in the same sense, show respect for the neighbors and the noise. I think ultimately that's what we need to establish here.
Well, those are certainly very wise words. I think the devil's in the details there. We've been trying to work with these guys coming up on a year. It started last fall when we started to try and put together a resolution, and we thought this permit or exemption type thing might help, but it sounds like that only made things worse.
And I can understand that, and I can agree. It was loud. It was very, very loud, and I don't think Greg's words quite came out with what his intentions were. But it could be a lot worse, and it could be a lot uglier. But in Greg's defense, he does let a lot of people come to the house and gives them a place to go and ride the bikes, and he does respond when the neighbors approach him and say, hey, listen, I'm having a party. The gentleman immediately next door to him says the same thing. We're having a party. Greg tells him, hey, listen, I'm having the guys over, and they communicate. I don't believe anyone in here has ever approached him on that first. This is where it's become. I'm sorry. Yes, Steve has. Steve has a little bit. But the question is at what point does he lose his rights, in general, in a whole?
That is the struggle between a township where you've got, neighborhoods abutting rural areas that do different things. And, so we're going to continue to try and work through this. Chief, do you have a scenario or the summary of what you found on Sunday? And then I would like Daryl to chime in with what he was tasked with at our last meeting to look into other noise ordinances.
Thank you, by the way.
Tekowski.
Well, first let me start off by saying that as a cop for almost 36 years, cops hate neighbor disputes, okay? But I've dealt with a lot of them. Some that I didn't think that I would be able to resolve, and they got resolved. I stand before you today pretty angry with what happened Sunday, okay? I've spent a lot of time on this, starting back last fall. Mr. Zeitler, Mr. Burrell, we had a meeting before, but December 21st, I thought we had an agreement, okay, as far as these noise exemptions. What I was trying to do, because I don't know how the law is going to sort out on this. I really don't, okay? It could go for Mr. Komisarek. It could go for Mr. Wright and the subdivision. But I thought, if we can work out something where both parties get a little something that they want, it would be advantageous, and everybody could walk away pretty happy. What I personally observed Mother's Day this past Sunday was over the top. I think that, and this is what I'm really angry about, is that I think Mr. Komisarek took advantage of a situation. Okay? We granted him a noise exemption. He forewarned me he was going to bring the big bikes out. I told him, no, I don't think that's a good idea. That's not working together to resolve this issue, which is what we're trying to do.
That was my right.
No, you know what? We do not have to issue you an exemption, okay? That's our right as a township. We can deny an exemption. It's not automatic that it's your right to get the exemption, okay? That's our decision. And unfortunately, what I thought would happen, and I'll be honest with you, when I was out there Sunday, I was out there a long time, okay? And I saw one little four-wheeler, I saw one little mini bike that I will be the first to say, those were not loud. Those probably aren't any louder than a lawnmower, okay? But in bringing those big bikes out, like Mr. Collier said, he and I tried to have a conversation. We're 150 feet away from these bikes, and we were standing closer than we are, about this distance right here, and we couldn't even talk, okay? That was... Well, why did you take advantage of this situation when we were kind enough? Listen to me. Let me finish, and then when we were kind enough, and I will say kind enough to grant an exemption, and I and Mr. Zeitler signed off on it. Why couldn't you have let well enough alone and had the bikes out there? That's really important to you. You've told me your son's birthday party, and I understood where you were coming from, okay? He's 11 years old, okay? It's not every day you're 11 years old, okay? And you know, when I was a kid, I had a mini bike, okay? And rode it in a wooded area. It was much more isolated, but, you know, I understand that. Why couldn't we have just let well enough alone? I can tell you that I wouldn't have the tone that I do now and be standing here like this had those smaller bikes been out there and had it not been so outrageously loud. But I feel that you took advantage of the situation by your own words, and you went on Channel 13 in front of the camera and said the same thing. When I watched the 11 o'clock news, I got even more angry because I hear, well, we're going to show them how bad it can really be, or something to that effect. Is that working? Excuse me. Is that working with us to try to resolve this situation? You know, you made the point. We still would have been called. Okay, yeah, maybe we would have been called, but at the same time, like everybody else has said here, like you've admitted, he hasn't been written a noise citation yet. Okay.
No, because every time they show up, it's usually little bikes or quiet bikes, and they call. So no matter what's going on, even like they said, they just call on for lawnmower, chainsaw, lawnmower. Excuse me. I'm sorry to be rude. We need to get you on tape to speak, just for record and public records and things like that. So let's let the chief finish what he has to say, and then if you'd be so kind, just come up and I'm not even. Are they? If they're not signed up, John, you want to let them? Okay, you're signed. Yeah. Just let the chief let the chief speak, please.
I'll conclude by basically saying that, quite frankly, I tried to work with, I'll say, you people, the Heisler residents, okay? Because quite frankly, we could have just gone ahead and written citations back then too, okay? I could order, okay, I'm a police chief. I could order my guys to write the citation, and they're going to damn well write it, okay? But I didn't do that because I wanted to work with you people. I wanted both sides to get a little something that I thought it was very reasonable that you get 5 or 6 dates during the course of the warm weather, okay? And then you've got all those other dates that there should not be any activity. I think that's reasonable, okay? But instead, you know, I don't know what the thinking was, we're going to teach these Kings Hollow people a lesson or whatever, but, you know, it's no guarantee that either side is going to win on this, okay? And that's why I was trying to work out some kind of mediation. First thing you're going to do, hey, you know what? Lots of experience as a cop. Civil cases, criminal cases, attorneys can vouch for this, okay? You know, a court is going to try to work out mediation too. That's what my effort was in this whole thing, okay? But I feel that the police department and the whole process was taken advantage of by bringing the big bikes out. Again, my tone would be completely different. My attitude about this whole thing would be completely different if those smaller bikes had been out there, okay, and you got the exemption and it wasn't that bad, okay? I can't speak for anything other than what happened this past Sunday because I have Sundays off, except for last Sunday, And I have not heard how loud it is or not. I depend on my officers to advise me if they think it's reasonable or not. And this whole reasonable standard, we've had, it's difficult. I mean, ask Mr. Burrell, and he's an attorney that's probably practiced law for 40 years or whatever, right? And, it's difficult, as far as I'm concerned, the reasonable standard. But you blew that out of the water when you brought those bikes out there.
Previously said. How many times have they been out? What have they previously said? Well, we don't have a record of that, so I don't want to get into hearsay or the chief kind of guessing what they said.
I guess I would just simply say that, from my opinion, and the board, and I don't know if we should discuss this behind closed doors or not, but I'm prepared to say that we do not grant any more exemptions. I think they abused what we tried to work out. And the one thing I think I told you at the last meeting is I'm very protective of our police department. We have a good police department with good officers. And I don't want anybody to feel that we do not do our job, okay? And just like sometimes we're forced to do in criminal cases, okay, if there's some discretion, we can consult with the prosecutor and see if charges are appropriate. We don't have that luxury here, so I'm prepared to say that we don't grant any more exemptions, and if we get complaints in the future, we go ahead and write the citation, and we let the courts decide, just like the prosecutor would decide in a criminal case.
Thank you, Chief.
Sure.
Yes, thank you very much.
Daryl, do you have anything to add with what you found, or John?
Yeah, John Burrell has noise ordinances from various other. What came to the conclusion before I have John speak is the noise ordinance is not under zoning. It's under a civil, the police department under a civil offense. And Mr. Burrell looked at some in other areas.
Daryl did get, as you asked him to do, Daryl did gather a significant number of ordinances from other jurisdictions. Most of them have the very similar language to what your noise ordinance does. I assume whoever wrote that went around and did the same thing I would do, gathered it from other jurisdictions. It's very similar to the Sylvania one. So that term that's used here, reasonable person standard, appears in many other jurisdictions. There are some, like Oregon, which has a more specific one, that ties things to decibel levels. Ours, of course, does not do that, and the majority of them do not do that. The reasonable person standard used in that statute is a common one in law. While it may seem vague, it is not at all an uncommon standard. At least in the law, it has some specific meaning, and it would mean, what a reasonable person would think is all right. Say here on Holland, Sylvania Avenue, or way out on Mitchar, way out there, might be different than if it was in St. James. They're different areas, and they call for different things. But that's what the reasonable standard is. So while it may seem vague, it is a common legal test that we use. And it would be up to the police officers, not only here, throughout the township. Remember, whatever we do to this ordinance applies to the entire township. So I would advise you not to change the noise ordinance just because of this situation. We might cause more problems in other areas. We have one that is not, fits the pattern of many. And when the police officers are called out there, they have to use their judgment as a reasonable person to decide whether that meets the standard. And then it would go to court. It's basically a ticket that then is sent to Sylvania Municipal Court. Although it's not a crime, it's a civil action. The first conviction is $100. The second one is $200. The third and subsequent one are $50 or $500 each. And the judge out there, it's Judge Ramey, would decide whether or not, based on the testimony, it violated the noise resolution.
Steve? Thanks, John.
Yeah, and John and I have known each other. I've not practiced quite as long as he has. Put that on the record. But the Ohio Supreme Court case refers to the disorderly conduct statute, revised code 291711A2. This is separate and apart from a local noise ordinance, and it says it incorporates an objective standard by prohibiting only noise that is unreasonable. The Ohio Supreme Court has upheld that type of language. So there could be charges under this statute as well as a noise ordinance statute. You have to have a right before it can be taken away. You do not have a right to violate the law. You do not have a right to cause a nuisance, to cause unreasonable noise that causes annoyance to people. That is not a right. And I would say, with respect to Greg, I don't dispute, he's a hard worker, and he doesn't have maybe all that much time off. And also that some said this is all the time. It's not all the time either way, okay? It's more than just a few times, and I'm not talking about the big bikes, but even some of the smaller ones can be very loud. And but it's not all the time, but it got to the point here, I guess I support what the chief says, is that tried to work it out, and as Brian indicated, I think after that last meeting, I came to the house and Brian was there, and I said, Brian, this is getting out of hand. And so I tried to do something then too. So, thank you for your time.
Yeah. What's the statute that you said, Steve?
Yeah, it's 2917-11A2 in the Ohio Supreme Court.
The Ohio Supreme Court case?
Yeah, it's State of Ohio versus Carrick, Carrick, 131 Ohio State 3rd, 340. 2012 case that arose, and that had to do with a party and noise. So.
Well, kind of to start, I'm in favor of granting no more exceptions for whatever we granted last Sunday. That sounded like that got abused beyond belief on Mother's Day. I certainly feel for the gentleman who owns the property and has done it. Looking at the timeline, he moved in a year before the neighborhood was put in. He said he bought it in '95, and you guys said the neighborhood's been there 21 years.
His parents, I believe, had the property back then. Greg, isn't it true you recently bought it in the last 2 to 3 years, something like that?
About 3.5 years.
Yeah.
I've had bikes there since '99.
Well, again, over all this time, I've never made a complaint to you in the past. It was only in the last 2 years when things started getting out of hand.
That's when the population started driving there, and I think Chief, you'll probably be a neighbor right in there before too long, so you might be joining them here.
That's not why I'm taking a position. I'll be south there.
Yes. Talking to one of our personnel earlier today, he has a background and a history in noise control, noise things, and I'd like to utilize his resources a little bit more. But again, I think that based off of the officer's decision that they write noise ordinance citations, and we find out where the courts lie with this. I think it's been a difficult one for all of us. We've tried to work with you, and I think everybody was involved in the good faith effort that we tried to negotiate some sort of settlement back in December. And
by the way, I have never received a copy of
that. Again, that would explain why they said you never signed it. So,
I have never received a copy of that. The only time I have seen that is where 13 posted it online. They posted it as an attached file. I have never received a copy of that. The only time I have seen it is on my phone, pulled up from 13 ABC.
Mr. Genowine, I will tell you that, Greg, I sent a copy of it to your address because you're not home all the time. I don't know what happened to it, but I did send a copy of it. And I also will add, that was just notes of the verbal agreement of December 21st, at which you were present and Brian was present. Okay, there was no binding contract. There was nothing to sign. There's been some mistake with that on both sides. That was a mediation effort. Okay, that's nothing more than a mediation effort in which everybody was present. Nobody had to sign anything. It was just notes of what we talked about, and a copy of that was sent to your home.
Neil, do you have
I'm with you. I'm with you. I agree with you.
Mr. Simcoe, our legal representation on the board.
Yeah, I would agree that if it's appropriate, the police officers go out and they feel there's a violation and consistent with the statute, then they should write a citation. If there's not, then they don't.
So are we considering this that Chief Bomian says they show up, they write a citation, or are they coming out and using their own discretion? Because I have never been issued a citation. that this has been going on for many years, that there has never been a citation of any kind, and all of a sudden I got a word out of Chief Bomey over here that he could possibly tell the officers if they get called, write me a citation. Is that what's going to happen, or are we going to sit here and be reasonable?
It's our goal to have our officers act appropriately and accordingly. And if they go out and find that the noise is excessive and a nuisance, then I would expect them to write a citation. The township does own a decibel meter, and I understand that you can also download an app on your phone, which also is very accurate. Again, I don't know if there's a set number that is going to trigger a nuisance level, but I do think that what I'm hearing was on Sunday was just.
I want there to be a very clear definition between excessive and not excessive. Sunday was definitely excessive. Is Sunday there was an exemption? What is your definition of exemption?
Well, we're not going to be issuing any more of those, so we're not going to make that mistake again.
Usually, most of the bikes we ride aren't modern lawnmower, but they call them lawnmowers. So, what's the definition of excessive when they call them a lawnmower? The majority of the bikes aren't modern than that, so that's being unreasonable.
Great question, first of all. But I think that's where we rely on the chief to administer and administrate.
His officers will walk down the driveway and they laugh. Because they see what's going on, they know how those bikes are, and they laugh. They're like, they called again.
Well,
I have had this multiple times, with the exception of this past Sunday. Anytime an officer has been present, they have told us we are doing absolutely nothing wrong, continue. They have had permission to come enter the property, to take a look at all the bikes, to see that they have full exhaust. They have witnessed people ride around, all that kind of thing, and you're good to go. There is absolutely no argument that Sunday was excessive. Sunday was an exemption. If you have a definition of exempt, that is what we're going for Sunday, what things possibly could be.
I did drive through your neighborhood around 5 o'clock, and
There have been many other days that were as loud as Sunday.
Steve,
I would really like to know when you.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. Are you kind of legal counsel for the group, or is there?
No,
okay.
I'm not legal
You're just
counsel.
one of representative.
I'm an individual citizen here. Okay.
Charge him.
Can you, for the association, is this a start in the right direction? What we're talking about here, with the chief and allowing him to go forward and let them do their job, and you guys okay with that as a whole group here? Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, like John Burrell said, the hard part is it's like, I live over off like Nantucket. People fly down there. Sometimes somebody might think it's too loud. Some people may not think. So it's kind of like a moving meter. But I do think that if this is a good start. This would be a good start. That let the chief. We're going to put in the chief's hands to follow through with this and make sure that they comply.
So I want to know what the chief's stance is here. Are we sitting there saying somebody shows up, I get a ticket, or are we saying somebody shows up?
I can't say that. It's a reasonable standard. I can't tell you
What
you're
did
going to
you
get a
just
second.
say up here?
I told you that I could order my officers to, you know what? I don't want to, but if I have to respond out there and make the call myself, possibly I'll do that. I can tell you that despite what you say, I've had officers tell me they think it is unreasonable. I've had other officers tell me it's not. What's reasonable to you may not be reasonable to even your friend Brian or whatever. So to try to put a defined term on what's reasonable, it's all according to the situation and the sound and the way the wind's blowing.
Time of day. I mean, there's a lot of factors.
Pardon me?
It has to do with the time of day and everything else.
Yeah.
There's something that is at noon could be perfectly fine. If it's happening at 9:30 at night, it might not be.
All right. I think we have a direction here. So, thank you for everybody's comments. What do we got? Executive session, John?
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to offer a motion to go into executive session at 6:49
Second.
to discuss personnel compensation, all non-union collective bargaining with Teamsters.
Second.
Call the roll, Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Oh, good.
I'd like to offer a motion to come out of executive session at 7:01.
Second.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
I'd like to offer Resolution 17-058 to approve labor agreement with the Teamsters Local 20. Whereas the current labor agreement between the Township and Teamsters Local 20 expired on December 31st, 2016, and whereas a mediator was brought in on March 23rd, 2017 to help both parties come to an agreement on wages, and whereas the mediator was unsuccessful in getting an agreement, and whereas fact-finding was held on April 27th, 2017 with Richard Turpinski, and whereas the Board of Trustees accepted the fact-finder's report on the regular meeting on May 2nd, 2017, and whereas the Teamsters voted on the fact-finder's report and the contract as a whole on Friday, May 5th, resulting in a ratification vote of 9-2. Now therefore be it resolved by the trustees of Sylvania Township, Lucas County, Ohio, that the labor agreement between the local Teamster 20 for the period of January 1st, 2017 through December 31st, 2019 be approved.
Second.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
I would also like to offer Resolution 17-059, granting Susan Wood a raise of 3%, which will be given as a lump sum prior to her departure on May 25th.
Second.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes. I would like to offer a resolution to adjourn at 7:03.
Second.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.